Hello again. I know that you are, like we all are, dealing with some very stressful things during these times. We're practicing social distancing and isolating ourselves. And in this fast paced world today, this is really surreal. This all has led me to think about Ludwig van Beethoven in his 250th year. On October 6, 1802, Beethoven wrote a letter to his brothers Carl and Johann, in which he expresses his despair and pain and struggle with what he called an incurable malady. And of course, he's referring to his increasing deafness, which he had begun to notice about 6 years earlier. He wrote in this letter, I was obliged early in life to isolate myself and to pass my existence in solitude. I found it impossible to say to others, Speak louder, shout, for I am deaf. Alas, how could I proclaim the deficiency of a sense which I once possessed in the highest perfection, to an extent, indeed, that few of my profession ever enjoyed? Alas, I cannot do this. Forgive me, therefore, when you see me withdraw. And he continues, But what humiliation when anyone beside me heard a flute in the far distance, while I heard nothing, or when others heard a shepherd singing, and I still heard nothing. Such things brought me to the verge of desperation. Can you imagine the great Beethoven having to pen these words? This letter, this very famous letter, has become known as the Heiligenstadt Testament, and interestingly, was never sent. Beethoven kept this letter private and hidden his whole life, and it was only discovered in 1827 after his death. In 1802, about the time that he wrote the Heiligenstadt Testament, he had just completed his first and second symphonies. In 1803 begins what some people refer to as Beethoven's heroic decade, which ends about the time of the premiere of the Seventh Symphony on December 8, 1813. It was performed at a benefit concert for Austrian and Bavarian soldiers who were wounded and had fought in the Battle of Hanau a little more than a month earlier, on October 30th and 31st of that year, 1813. For this concert, many famous musicians of the time performed honoring the soldiers. There was Louis Spohr, Giacomo Meyerbeer, Antonio Salieri, Domenico Dragonetti, Johann Nepomuceno, and many others. It was odd because of all the movements, that second movement was the most popular and had to be immediately repeated at the performance. Oh yes, it's captivating. That constant pulse, bum, 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 bum. That relentless rhythm. It gives us a steady cadence, allow us time to reflect and pay homage. Beethoven himself addressed the audience that night with these words. We are moved by nothing but pure patriotism and the joyful sacrifice of our powers for those who have sacrificed so much for us. So today, as we think of all of those who are on the front lines, who are sacrificing so much for us, helping battle this COVID-19 pandemic virus, I offer you the second movement, this Allegretto from Ludwig van Beethoven's Seventh Symphony, as our sincerest thanks and appreciation for all that you're doing to keep us safe and healthy.